This screencast is looking at what are the issues and opportunities for an ageing population. Now, previously, we've looked at these population pyramids, and what we said was that a lot of these countries are now having, up here, an increasing proportion in the very elderly group. And that obviously brings lots of issues for certain countries. Now, low birth rates and smaller families result in fewer children and adolescents. So as we can see at the bottom of this pyramid here for Germany, fewer younger people. Better healthcare and more advanced medicines allow people to live longer, increasing the proportions of elderly people up here. Now, today's older people in countries at further stages of development tend to be wealthier, fitter, have wider interests with the spare time to enjoy these. This is, however, the age group with the most expensive needs, especially in terms of healthcare. The 85 plus age group, the very elderly, is growing fastest and increasing stress on health and social welfare systems. So, what are the issues of having these elderly people? Well, obviously, healthcare. The demand for healthcare increases because more illness occurs in the old age. The elderly visit their GP, the doctor, more often. They have more hospital appointments. They have more time in hospital than younger or middle-aged people. The government has to find money to support older people, and this comes from taxation of present workers. So those people who are working pay their taxes, that money is then being used to look after these old people. There's an issue for social services. Elderly people, as we can see in the photo here, need other services such as nursing homes, daycare centres, people to help care for them at home themselves. These special needs put financial pressure on a country. Again, we need money to pay for. Another issue is the pensions crisis. Lots of news recently has been about pensions. Life expectancy is higher in developed countries than in developing countries. So in wealthier countries, people expect to be able to retire from work and have a pension. In other words, getting paid money for the rest of their lives. As there are more elderly people and the proportion of working people is decreasing, the taxes must increase to pay the pensions bill. So going back to this population pyramid, as we can see, these people up here, retirement age 65 in this country. So all of these people up here have a pension, and that's been paid for by the taxes of these people in the middle, who are your working people. Now, the state pension began in 1908 when male life expectancy was 67 and the retirement age was 65. So in other words, they would only receive their pension for another 2 years. So the taxpayers would only be paying, on average, kind of 2 years' worth of pension. Today, however, the situation could not be more different. Life expectancy has risen to 80. So in response to this, the retirement age is set to increase over the next few years. So where the retirement age was 65, it's gone up and up and up. So by the time that you are actually aged pension, I would imagine it's going to be somewhere around the 70 or even 70 plus mark before you can actually retire and get the state pension. There are, however, some opportunities. The situation has a positive side too. So younger retired people, those in their later 60s and early 70s, contribute a great deal to the economy. So because they are relatively wealthy, they have quite a bit of money, they have lots of time now, they spend their money on travel, so a lot of them go on holiday a lot, or recreation like the tennis that we can see in the photograph. This provides jobs for people in that sector. So anybody who employed in tourism benefit from that. People who obviously work in the tennis court here will benefit because these people are going there and using the money. Many of these elderly people do voluntary work and still actually do paid work and therefore pay taxes into the economy. So what does ageing in the EU look like? The European Union, or the EU, has very low birth rates. And as we can see in the table here, these are the birth rates per 1,000 for these different countries. Now the countries that have the W next to them, that's because they're a Western European country. Those countries with the E next to them are Eastern European countries. Now, going back over history, these birth rates have never been so low, and actually they're predicting that it might decrease even further in the future. Smaller families and later motherhood, so in other words, women having children later, could soon result in a noticeable decline in population in some countries. In each generation, there are fewer parents, so if there's fewer parents, fewer children are being born. In 2008, 1.6 babies were born in the EU for every woman. Now, to make sure your population is sustainable and stays the same, at least the same, you need to have 2.1 per woman. Western European birth rates are higher than those in Eastern Europe. However, Germany, a Western European country, has an even lower birth rate. As you can see in the table here, 8.3. So you can see the Western European countries here, slightly higher figures than the Eastern European countries here. So what are countries actually doing to try and sort this problem out? Well, this is a graph from France, and as you can see here that the birth rate has fallen from 1960 to 2010. So it's gone from roughly kind of 18 birth rates, people per 1,000, down to sort of about, 12.5, something like that. The death rate has continued to fall, and the natural increase is obviously fallen as well, because the gap between the birth rate and the death rate is getting smaller. Now, France are employing what's called a strong pro-natal policy. In other words, it's encouraging people to have children to produce a more favourable age structure and dependency ratio. This has had some effect, but it's not been entirely successful, as we can see on the graph. So this graph showing us here, it's still not been as successful as it would like to have been. So what kind of things they're doing? Well, couples are given a range of incentives to have children. So if they have children, they can have 3 years of paid parental leave, which can be used by the mothers or the fathers. So I'll put that into kind of context. At the minute, kind of in this country, the women kind of get 6 months full pay and then another 6 months of half pay. And then after the year, that's it, they won't get paid from their job. In France, what they're saying is that you can have 3 years fully paid to look after your children and help bring them up, which is one of the issues when you kind of think about having children yourself. Full-time schooling starts at the age of 3, so you can look after your children until 3 and then off they go to school, and that's fully paid for by the government. They have daycare for children younger than 3, subsidised by the government. If you didn't want to stay off work for the 3 years looking after your child, it's a lot cheaper in France than it would be probably in this country to get your child looked after. And the more children a woman has, the earlier she will be allowed to retire on a full pension. So, give one example. A woman called Nicole Falcao, she's 53-year-old, she lives in Muret, close to Toulouse in southwest France. She's married with 3 daughters, aged between 14 and 22, and works locally with disabled children. She has 3 children of her own. That means she's entitled to extra benefits from the government. She can retire in her early 50s on a full state pension if she chooses. Although a pension is always less than a salary, as her children grow up and become less financially dependent, it's obviously going to be a tempting offer.